A single mother cleaned bathrooms to provide for her child. The Millionaire CEO finds corrections in documents that could save his company. When the millionaire discovers the single mother's past, he is completely shocked. What happened in that office will surprise you. Sarah Mitchell had learned long ago that fairness was a luxury she couldn't afford. The moment she first held her son Tyler in her arms 6 years ago, something fundamental shifted within her. Dreams transformed into practical needs, a roof overhead, food on the table, and the fierce determination that her child would never face the hardships she had endured. The gleaming glass tower of Pinnacle Investments stood as a monument to wealth and power in downtown Chicago, where Sarah worked as part of the night cleaning crew. Her uniform, a simple gray outfit with the contractor's logo, served as perfect camouflage. The executives in their tailored suits barely registered her existence as she emptied their trash bins and wiped down their conference tables. She moved through the 50-floor building like a ghost, present yet unseen. "Make sure you get the executive floor spotless tonight," her supervisor barked as she distributed assignments. "They've got big shots flying in from New York tomorrow." Sarah nodded, gathering her supplies. The executive floor was simultaneously the easiest and the hardest to clean, immaculate by design but scrutinized with unforgiving eyes. As she pushed her cart into the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. At 32, fatigue had etched fine lines around her eyes, but she still recognized traces of the woman she once was. The woman who had grown up in penthouse apartments, who had attended elite private schools, who had been groomed to take her place among the financial elite. That woman had died the day her father, Robert Mitchell, once a celebrated investment genius, was betrayed by his business partner and lost everything. Within months, her family's wealth evaporated, her college education at Wharton became unaffordable, and she found herself alone and pregnant, abandoned by a boyfriend who had loved her status more than her. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and Sarah set to work methodically cleaning each office. Her hands, once manicured for boardrooms, now bore calluses from harsh cleaning chemicals. Yet her mind remained sharp, absorbing fragments of business strategies left carelessly on whiteboards or in forgotten printouts. It was nearly midnight when she reached the corner office belonging to Pinnacle's CEO, Nathan Blackwell. His reputation preceded him, ruthlessly brilliant, self-made, and known for both his market intuition and uncompromising standards. His office reflected his personality, minimalist, organized, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. As Sarah approached his desk to empty the trash, the glow of a computer screen caught her attention. Someone had left. A presentation open, a financial model for what appeared to be a major acquisition. Her trained eye immediately spotted discrepancies in the projections. The cash flow analysis contained a fundamental error that would drastically undervalue the target company. Sarah hesitated. She had spent years making herself invisible, teaching herself that survival meant keeping her head down. Yet something about this error tugged at her, perhaps the ghost of her father's voice, teaching her about compound interest over breakfast when she was 12. Before she could reconsider, Sarah grabbed a notepad from the desk, jotted down the correct calculations, and placed it beside the keyboard with a simple note. "Your model undervalues by 17%. Check the discounted cash flow assumptions on slide 24. The next morning, Nathan Blackwell arrived at his office earlier than usual. At 40, he had built Pinnacle from nothing into one of the country's most respected investment firms. The acquisition he was preparing would be his crowning achievement, if he could convince the board it was worth the risk. He immediately noticed the note on his desk. Reading it, his expression shifted from annoyance to surprise. He opened the presentation and examined slide 24 carefully. After running the numbers himself, a rare feeling of discomfort settled over him. The note was right. "Janet," he called to his executive assistant, "who was in my office last night?" "Just the cleaning crew, sir," she replied, placing his morning coffee on the desk. "Find out who specifically cleaned this office. I want to speak with them." Hours later, Sarah was called to her supervisor's office, her heart pounding. Had she crossed a line? Would she lose the job she desperately needed? "The big boss wants to see you," her supervisor said, clearly as confused as Sarah was fearful. "Fifth floor, conference room C, now." Sarah's hands trembled as she removed her cleaning gloves. She smoothed her hair and straightened her uniform before heading to the elevator, mentally calculating how long her savings would last if she was fired today. When she entered the conference room, Nathan Blackwell was standing by the window, his back to her. He turned slowly, his penetrating gaze taking her measure. "You left this note?" he asked, holding up her handwriting. Sarah nodded, lifting her chin slightly. "Yes, sir." "And how exactly does someone on the cleaning staff understand discounted cash flow analysis?" Sarah hesitated. "I used to study finance." Nathan's eyebrows rose slightly. "Used to?" "Life happened," she replied simply. He studied her for a long moment. "Your correction saved us from a potentially disastrous undervaluation. I'm curious, what would you do with that information if you were in my position?" Sarah felt a familiar spark ignite within her, the intellectual challenge she had once lived for. "I'd revise the offer upward by 12%, not the full 17%. That leaves room for negotiation, while still being attractive to the target company, whose management is clearly eager to sell based on their recent SEC filings." Nathan's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "What's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "Well, Sarah Mitchell, I have a proposition for you. 3 months in our financial analysis department. Temporary position, entry-level salary, but a real desk instead of a cleaning cart." His tone hardened. "I want to see if you can actually contribute, or if you just got lucky with one correction." Sarah's mind raced. The salary would be better, the hours would align with Tyler's school schedule, but the risk was enormous. She'd be entering a world that had rejected her, facing people who would see her as an imposter. "Why would you offer this to someone who cleans your office?" she asked. "I recognize talent regardless of where I find it," Nathan replied. "But make no mistake, this isn't charity. If you fail, you're out. If you succeed..." He shrugged. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Sarah thought of Tyler, of the tiny apartment they shared, of the dreams she had buried years ago. "I accept." Neither of them could have anticipated how this decision would set in motion events that would transform not only their professional lives, but their very understanding of trust, revenge, and redemption. Sarah had no way of knowing that among Pinnacle's upper echelon lurked the very people responsible for her father's downfall, or that Nathan harbored secrets of his own that would soon collide with her hidden past. As she left the conference room, Sarah felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. For the first time in years, she was stepping back into the light. But visibility brought its own dangers, and some predators had been waiting a very long time to finish what they had started with the Mitchell family. "Mommy, why are you wearing that?" 6-year-old Tyler's eyes widened as Sarah emerged from her bedroom, wearing a charcoal pencil skirt and crisp white blouse, clothes she had purchased second-hand and carefully tailored the night before. "Remember how I told you I'm starting a new job at the same building?" Sarah knelt to straighten Tyler's school uniform. "I won't be cleaning anymore. I'll be working with numbers like Grandpa used to." Tyler's face brightened. "Will we be rich like in your stories?" Sarah's heart constricted. The stories were memories she shared of her childhood, sailing on Lake Michigan, summer houses in Martha's Vineyard, holiday parties where senators mingled with CEOs. To Tyler, they must have seemed like fairy tales. "No, sweetheart, but we might be able to move to a better apartment soon, one with a park nearby." She kissed his forehead. "Now Miss Eleanor is waiting to take you to school." After dropping Tyler with their elderly neighbor who watched him before school, Sarah arrived at Pinnacle Investments 45 minutes early. She wanted time to orient herself before facing whatever challenges awaited. Janet, Nathan Blackwell's executive assistant, greeted her with a thin smile. "Mr. Blackwell asked me to get you settled." Her tone made it clear she found the assignment beneath her. "You'll be in Cubicle 27, supporting the acquisition team. The financial analysis department occupied the 34th floor, 17 floors below the executive level, but worlds away from the service corridors Sarah had navigated as part of the cleaning crew. The space was open concept, with glass-walled conference rooms lining the perimeter and rows of workstations filling the center. As Janet led her through the office, Sarah felt eyes tracking her movement, whispers following in her wake. News of her unusual promotion had clearly preceded her. "Your credentials don't work for the restricted databases yet," Janet explained as she logged into the computer at Sarah's new desk. "HR is still processing your transition." She handed Sarah a temporary badge. "The team meeting is at 9 in conference room B, don't be late." Left alone, Sarah took a deep breath and examined her workspace. A standard desk with a computer, phone, and empty inbox. Nothing personal, nothing distinctive, a blank slate. She opened the acquisition file that had been loaded onto her desktop, a redacted version of what she'd glimpsed in Nathan's office. Even with limited information, she could see the target company was Millionaire, a mid-sized software developer specializing in financial security systems. The acquisition team meeting was led by Marcus Reynolds, a senior vice president with silver-streaked hair and a Harvard MBA prominently displayed on his office wall. His expression soured when Sarah entered the room. "Ah, our newest analyst," he said, emphasizing the last word with barely disguised contempt. "Ms. Mitchell, isn't it? Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself to the team." Sarah stood acutely, aware of the 12 pairs of eyes examining her. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm looking forward to contributing to the Millionaire acquisition analysis." A young man with a precisely trimmed beard smirked. "And what exactly qualifies you for this position? Most of us have MBAs from top schools and years of experience." Before Sarah could respond, a woman's voice cut in from the doorway. "Perhaps the fact that she spotted a 17% valuation error that the rest of you missed?" All heads turned to see Olivia Carter, Pinnacle's chief financial officer, standing in the doorway. In her mid-40s, Olivia exuded confidence without arrogance, her presence commanding immediate respect. "Blackwell told me about your catch," she said to Sarah. "Impressive instinct." Marcus cleared his throat. "Olivia, while we appreciate fresh perspectives, there are protocols." "Save it, Marcus," Olivia interrupted. "Nathan wants her on this team, which means I want her on this team." She turned to Sarah. "Stop by my office after this meeting. I have a specific assignment for you." The meeting proceeded with presentations on Millionaire's financial position, market share, and strategic value. Sarah listened intently, taking notes and absorbing every detail. When Marcus outlined the proposed negotiation strategy, she noticed the same flawed assumptions she had corrected on Nathan's presentation. "Excuse me," she said during a pause, "but if we're still using the original cash flow projections, we're undervaluing their recurring revenue stream." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The models have been thoroughly reviewed by the entire team." "Not thoroughly enough," Sarah countered, grabbing a marker and approaching the whiteboard. "Their subscription model creates compounding value in years 3 through 5 that isn't reflected here." As she diagrammed the correct analysis, the room fell silent. Some team members looked skeptical, others intrigued. When she finished, Olivia was the first to respond. "Run the numbers again with Sarah's assumptions," she instructed. "I want a comparison report by end of day." After the meeting, Sarah followed Olivia to her corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Lake Michigan. Unlike Nathan's minimalist space, Olivia's office was warm and personalized, with abstract art on the walls and family photos on her desk. "Sit," Olivia said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "I'm going to be direct. You're walking into a snake pit." Sarah nodded. "I'm aware." "Are you?" Marcus Reynolds has been gunning for the position of Chief Investment Officer for years. The Millionaire acquisition is his ticket. You just publicly challenged his competence. "I'm just doing the job Mr. Blackwell hired me to do." Olivia leaned forward. "Nathan has a reputation for unconventional decisions, but bringing you in from the cleaning staff has everyone talking. Some think you're sleeping with him. Others think you're a corporate spy. No one believes you're just good with numbers." Sarah flinched. "What do you think?" "I think Nathan rarely makes mistakes about talent, but I also think talent isn't always enough in this world." Olivia handed her a folder. I want you to analyze these subsidiaries of Militech separately from the main acquisition team. Report directly to me." As Sarah returned to her desk, she noticed a tall, elegant man watching her from across the floor. When their eyes met, he approached with a disarming smile. "James Foster," he introduced himself, "International Investments, Sarah Mitchell." "Yes, everyone knows who you are." His tone was friendly, but something in his eyes made Sarah uneasy. "I knew your father, you know." Sarah froze. "My father?" "Robert Mitchell, brilliant man." James studied her reaction. His downfall was unfortunate. Some people still talk about it. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. It was the school nurse. Tyler had fallen during recess and needed to be picked up. As she gathered her things, James Foster's parting words followed her to the elevator. "Welcome back to our world, Sarah. I hope you last longer than your father did." That evening, as Sarah applied ice to Tyler's bruised knee, her mind raced. James Foster knew her father, knew her history. How many others at Pinnacle might recognize the Mitchell name? She had spent years distancing herself from her past, building a life of anonymity. Now that protective barrier was crumbling, her phone chimed with an email notification from Nathan Blackwell. Subject: tomorrow's board meeting. "Mitchell, your analysis of the recurring revenue projections impressed Olivia. I want you to present these findings at tomorrow's board meeting. This is not a request. NB." Sarah stared at her phone, a mixture of pride and terror washing over her. A board presentation meant visibility at the highest levels of the company. It was an opportunity to prove her worth and a chance for whoever might remember the Mitchell scandal to connect the dots. As Tyler fell asleep beside her on their pull-out sofa bed, Sarah opened her laptop and began preparing her presentation. On the screen, the Militech financials revealed an intricate pattern of subsidiaries and holdings that sparked a distant memory. She'd seen a similar structure before, in her father's files from the investigation that followed his financial ruin. With growing unease, she dug deeper into Militech's corporate history. 3 subsidiaries had been acquired in the past 5 years, each previously owned by shell companies that seemed designed to obscure their true ownership. One name on a regulatory filing from 7 years ago made her blood run cold: Archer Global Partners, the same investment firm that had orchestrated her father's destruction. The boardroom of Pinnacle Investments exuded power. A massive oval table of polished walnut dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs occupied by the 12 members of the board. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's financial district, the morning sun glinting off neighboring skyscrapers. Sarah stood at the presentation screen, acutely aware of her second-hand clothes and the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. Nathan Blackwell sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Marcus Reynolds barely concealed his disdain. "This is Sarah Mitchell from our financial analysis team," Nathan introduced her without preamble. "She's identified significant value in Militech that our initial assessment missed." Sarah took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. Years of watching her father address investors had taught her the importance of confidence, clarity, and command of the data. Despite her racing heart, her voice remained steady as she walked the board through her analysis of Militech's recurring revenue model. "Based on these projections," she concluded, "we should adjust our valuation upward by 14%, while still maintaining an acquisition price that offers Pinnacle substantial long-term value." When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the questions began. The board members were thorough, incisive, testing the boundaries of her knowledge. Sarah answered each query with precision, drawing on financial instincts dormant for nearly a decade. "Very impressive, Ms. Mitchell," said Eleanor Winters, the board's most senior member, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for ruthless intelligence. "Though I must ask, where exactly did you receive your financial training?" The question hung in the air, a subtle probe into her background. From the corner of her eye, Sarah noticed James Foster watching her with peculiar interest. "I studied finance at Wharton," Though I didn't complete my degree, Sarah answered, keeping her voice neutral. Most of my education came from practical experience. Interesting, Eleanor responded. Your analysis reminds me of someone I used to know. He had a similar eye for hidden value patterns. Before Sarah could respond, Nathan interjected. If there are no further questions about the Miller Tech analysis, we should move to a vote on the revised acquisition strategy. The board approved her recommendations unanimously. As the meeting adjourned, Nathan gave her a curt nod, the closest thing to approval she'd seen from him. The victory should have felt sweeter, but the shadow of Eleanor's comment and James Foster's watchful gaze left Sarah uneasy. As she gathered her materials, James approached. That was quite a performance, he said smoothly. Robert would have been proud. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah replied, her pulse quickening. James smiled. Come now, Sarah. The daughter of Robert Mitchell working as an analyst at Pinnacle. It's almost poetic. Does Nathan know who you really are? My past isn't relevant to my work here. Everything is relevant in this world. He leaned closer. We should have dinner sometime. Discuss old times. Your father and I had some unfinished business. Sarah pushed past him, maintaining her composure until she reached the women's restroom. Once alone, she pressed her forehead against the cool marble wall, trying to slow her breathing. James Foster knew exactly who she was and seemed to be hinting at some connection to her father's downfall. Her phone vibrated with a text from Nathan. My office, now. When Sarah entered Nathan's office, she found him standing by the window, his back to her. The board was impressed, he said without turning, as was I. Thank you. Which brings me to my question. He turned to face her. Why isn't there a record of a Sarah Mitchell at Wharton during the years you claim to have studied there? Sarah's stomach dropped. You investigated me. Of course I did. I don't bring unknown variables into my company without due diligence. His eyes narrowed. So who are you really, Sarah Mitchell? Or should I say Sarah Mitchell Reynolds? The use of her full birth name, the name she had legally shortened after her father's disgrace, confirmed her fears. Nathan had discovered her connection to the Reynolds financial scandal that had rocked Wall Street 8 years ago. Your father was Robert Mitchell Reynolds, who lost his investment firm after being accused of fraud, Nathan continued. Charges that were later dropped, but not before his reputation and fortune were destroyed. Sarah lifted her chin. Yes. And what does that have to do with my work here? Everything. Nathan's composure cracked. Why are you at Pinnacle? Is this about revenge? Are you trying to access our systems, steal our strategies? He stepped closer. Or is this about getting close to me specifically? I needed a job, Sarah replied, anger rising to match his. I was cleaning offices because it paid the bills. I corrected your presentation because the error was obvious to anyone with proper training. You offered me this position. I didn't seek it out. A convenient story. It's the truth. Nathan studied her for a long moment. Several board members recognized your approach today. Eleanor Winters specifically mentioned that you reminded her of your father. Did you know she was one of his clients? She lost millions in his collapse. Sarah hadn't known, and the revelation sent a chill through her. My father was many things, but he wasn't a fraud. He was set up by his partner. Alexander Jensen, Nathan nodded, who conveniently disappeared with millions after your father took the fall. My father trusted the wrong person. He made one mistake and paid for it with everything. Nathan's expression hardened. I don't believe in coincidences, Ms. Mitchell Reynolds. Your presence at Pinnacle, your access to the Miller Tech acquisition, one of our most sensitive deals in years, strikes me as extremely convenient. Fire me then, Sarah challenged, her frustration boiling over. If you think I'm some kind of corporate spy, get rid of me. That would be the easy solution, Nathan agreed. But I'm not convinced you're working alone. Whoever sent you would simply try another approach. He walked to his desk and pulled out a file. So instead, I'm going to keep you where I can see you. He handed her the file. Inside was a contract for a permanent position at Pinnacle, with a salary 3 times her temporary arrangement. You're still offering me a job? After accusing me of espionage? Consider it a chess move, Nathan replied coldly. You'll work directly under my supervision on special projects. Your access to Militech and all other acquisition data is revoked, effective immediately. Sarah's mind raced. The salary would transform her and Tyler's lives. They could move to a safer neighborhood, afford better schools. But working directly with Nathan meant constant scrutiny, perpetual suspicion. Why would I agree to this? Because the alternative is that I share my concerns about your true identity and intentions with the SEC, Nathan said softly. Financial fraud investigations tend to cast a wide net. They might become very interested in the daughter of Robert Mitchell Reynolds suddenly appearing at a major investment firm. It was a threat, thinly veiled, but unmistakable. That's blackmail. That's business, Nathan corrected. I'm protecting my company. Sarah thought of Tyler, of the sacrifices she'd made to keep him safe and provided for. An SEC investigation, even a baseless one, would destroy the fragile stability she'd built. Fine, she said finally. I accept. Smart choice. You start tomorrow in the executive suite, 8 a.m. sharp. As Sarah left Nathan's office, she nearly collided with James Foster in the hallway. His smile suggested he'd overheard at least part of their conversation. Trouble in paradise already? He asked. Such a shame when trust breaks down. What do you want from me, Mr. Foster? Just to renew old acquaintances, he replied. Your father and I had quite the relationship before Alexander Jensen came into the picture. You knew Jensen? Something flashed in James's eyes, satisfaction at having caught her interest. Oh, yes. Very well indeed. In fact, I may be one of the few people who knows where he disappeared to after your father's professional setback. Sarah's pulse quickened. For years she had fantasized about finding Alexander Jensen, the man who had framed her father and destroyed their family. Where is he? Information like that comes with a price, Sarah. James handed her his business card. When you're ready to have a real conversation about why you're at Pinnacle, call me. That evening, as Sarah helped Tyler with his homework, in their small apartment, her mind kept returning to James Foster's insinuations. If he truly knew Alexander Jensen's whereabouts, it could be the key to clearing her father's name. Her laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender was listed only as a friend, but the message chilled her blood. Sarah, your new position has attracted unwanted attention. Be careful what you share with Nathan Blackwell. He has his own connection to the Jensen affair, one that makes your presence at Pinnacle more dangerous than you realize. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Attached was a photograph. Nathan Blackwell and Alexander Jensen, arms around each other's shoulders at what appeared to be a yacht club. The photo was dated 3 months after her father's financial ruin. Sarah stared at the image, her world tilting on its axis. Nathan Blackwell knew Alexander Jensen, the man who had destroyed her father. And tomorrow, she would begin working directly for him, trapped in a web of lies and suspicions that seemed to grow more tangled by the hour. As she tucked Tyler into bed, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. She would find out the truth about Nathan Blackwell's connection to Alexander Jensen. She would discover why James Foster seemed so invested in her presence at Pinnacle. And somehow, she would clear her father's name without losing everything she had fought to rebuild. What she couldn't possibly know was that forces had been set in motion long before she had ever entered Pinnacle's gleaming tower, forces that would soon threaten not just her career, but her life and the safety of everyone she loved. The executive floor of Pinnacle Investments felt like a different universe from the analyst bullpen where Sarah had spent the past week. Here, the carpet was thicker, the lighting softer, the silence more complete. As Nathan's new special projects assistant, she had been installed in a glass-walled office directly across from his, close enough for constant surveillance. Your security clearance has been adjusted, Janet explained, as she handed Sarah a new access card, her disapproval evident. Mr. Blackwell wants you to review these files before your meeting at 11. The stack of folders contained information on Pinnacle's most troubled assets, companies that were underperforming or showing signs of management issues. Sarah recognized it for what it was, Busy work designed to keep her occupied while revealing nothing of strategic importance. At precisely 11, Nathan appeared in her doorway. "Walk with me," he commanded. They took the executive elevator to the roof, where a helipad and small garden offered privacy. Chicago stretched out below them, the autumn wind whipping across the space. "I've been thinking about your father's case," Nathan said abruptly. "The similarities to certain patterns we're seeing with Militech are concerning." Sarah's heart skipped. "What similarities?" "Financial structures designed to obscure ownership, subsidiaries that exist primarily to shuttle assets, the same techniques Jensen used to siphon money from Mitchell Reynolds' investments." "You seem well versed in my father's downfall," Sarah observed carefully. Nathan's eyes met hers. "I studied it extensively. It was a textbook case of how trust can be weaponized in finance." "Is that why you have photos with Alexander Jensen? You studied him too?" A flicker of surprise crossed Nathan's face before his composure returned. "I see you've been doing some research of your own. Someone sent me that photo, you and Jensen looking quite friendly 3 months after he destroyed my father. And you immediately assumed the worst," Nathan nodded. "I would have done the same." He leaned against the railing. "Yes, I knew Jensen. We were at Harvard Business School together. That photo was taken at an alumni event, where I was attempting to gather information about his activities." "Why would you care about Jensen's activities?" Nathan hesitated, seeming to weigh his next words. "Because Robert Mitchell Reynolds wasn't Jensen's only victim. My father's shipping company was another." Sarah stared at him. "What?" "Jensen orchestrated a similar scheme with my father's CFO. By the time the fraud was discovered, the company was in ruins. My father suffered a heart attack from the stress." Nathan's voice remained even, but Sarah saw a muscle tighten in his jaw. "He didn't survive it." The revelation shifted everything. "So you built Pinnacle?" "From nothing, yes. And I've spent the last decade tracking Jensen's activities through various shells and proxies." He turned to face her fully. "Which is why your sudden appearance at my company, followed by your targeted interest in Militech, raised every red flag I have." "You think I'm working with Jensen?" Sarah asked incredulously. "I considered it," Nathan admitted. "But your reaction to his name, your genuine surprise at the photo, those can't be easily faked." He handed her a folder. "This is what I've gathered on Jensen's current activities. He's operating under the name Andrew Jacobson now, running a private equity firm called Meridian Capital." Sarah opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was surveillance photos of Alexander Jensen, older, with gray hair and designer glasses, but unmistakably the man who had betrayed her father. "Why show me this?" "Because I believe Meridian Capital is the real force behind Militech's recent restructuring. They're preparing it for our acquisition, but I can't figure out why." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "I need someone who understands Jensen's methods from the inside, someone with personal motivation to expose him." "You want to use me as bait," Sarah realized. "I want us to help each other," Nathan corrected. "You want to clear your father's name. I want to prevent Jensen from using my company for whatever scheme he's running. Our interests align." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Tyler's school. A cold knot formed in her stomach as she answered. "Miss Mitchell, this is Principal Davis. There was an incident involving Tyler today." "Is he hurt?" Sarah asked, panic rising. "No, but he's quite upset. A man approached him during recess, claiming to be a friend of yours. When the teacher intervened, the man left, but Tyler says he showed him pictures of you and made him uncomfortable." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "I'm coming right now." As she ended the call, Nathan was already directing his helicopter pilot to prepare for immediate departure. "Where's his school?" "North Lincoln Elementary," Sarah replied, still processing the threat. "But you don't need to." "Whoever sent you that photo of me and Jensen is escalating," Nathan cut her off. "We go together." 20 minutes later, they rushed into Tyler's school. The principal led them to her office, where Tyler sat drawing with crayons, a school counselor nearby. When he saw Sarah, he launched himself into her arms. "Mommy, the weird man knew my name and showed me pictures of you on his phone. He said you were in danger. Sarah held him tight, meeting Nathan's gaze over Tyler's head. The message was clear. Whoever was pulling the strings knew about her son and was willing to use him. "Did the man tell you his name, buddy?" Nathan asked gently, kneeling to Tyler's level. Tyler shook his head. "No, but he had a pin like yours." He pointed to Nathan's lapel, where a small Pinnacle Investments pin gleamed. Back at Pinnacle that afternoon, Sarah paced Nathan's office while Tyler napped on the leather sofa, exhausted from the morning's events. Nathan had tripled security and assigned a protective detail to both of them. "It has to be James Foster," Sarah insisted. "He's been hinting that he knows about my connection to Jensen." "Foster was in a meeting with the London office all morning," Nathan replied, checking reports on his tablet. "We've verified his whereabouts." "Then who?" Nathan's expression darkened. "Jensen has always worked through cutouts and proxies. He could have dozens of people at Pinnacle on his payroll." He looked up suddenly. "The Militech acquisition goes to final vote tomorrow. If Jensen has something planned, it will happen before then." Sarah's mind raced. "The subsidiary structure. I noticed something in their financial filings. 3 of Militech's acquired. Companies share the same offshore registration patterns as the shell companies Jensen used against my father." Nathan nodded grimly. "If we're right, Jensen is using Militech as a Trojan horse. Once Pinnacle acquires it, he'll have access to our systems, our client data, possibly even our trading algorithms." "We need proof," Sarah insisted. "Hard. Evidence that connects Jensen to Militech, something the board can't ignore." "The only real evidence would be in Militech's internal systems," Nathan said, frustration evident in his voice. "Systems we won't have access to until after the acquisition." Sarah picked up her tablet, an idea forming. "What about Olivia Carter? You said she's been suspicious about aspects of the deal." "Olivia has been at Pinnacle since the beginning. If there's anyone I trust, it's her." Nathan reached for his phone. "But we need to be careful. If Jensen has people inside Pinnacle, they're watching us now." As Nathan called Olivia, Sarah checked on Tyler, still sleeping peacefully. Her son's presence in this gleaming tower of power and deception felt profoundly wrong, yet she had nowhere else to take him that would be safe. Olivia arrived moments later, her usual composure tinged with concern. Her eyes softened at the sight of Tyler before turning to Nathan. "Security called. What's happening?" Nathan explained their suspicions about Jensen, Militech, and the approach to Tyler at school. Olivia listened without interruption, her expression growing darker. "I've been tracking inconsistencies in Militech's acquisition history for weeks," she admitted when he finished. "But I assumed it was typical corporate obfuscation, not something more sinister." She turned to Sarah. "You believe Jensen targeted your father specifically? It wasn't just opportunity." "My father always said it was too coordinated, too precise. Jensen knew exactly when to strike and how to frame him." Sarah hesitated. "He also mentioned a silent partner with connections to manipulate the investigation." Olivia exchanged a glance with Nathan. "Marcus Reynolds has been pushing this acquisition harder than anything I've seen in 15 years at Pinnacle. He's overridden concerns, fast-tracked approvals, and he was particularly upset by Sarah's presence on the team," Nathan finished. "We need to look at his communications with Militech." "Marcus is a senior VP," Olivia cautioned. "We can't just access his emails without cause." Sarah's phone chimed with a notification, an email from the same anonymous sender. "The answers you seek are in Marcus Reynolds' secondary email account. Password, Mitchell 1986. Check the drafts folder. Move quickly." She showed it to Nathan and Olivia. "Someone is feeding us information." "But why?" "It could be a trap," Nathan warned, "or someone inside who knows the truth but is afraid to come forward directly." Olivia took the phone, examining the message. "Mitchell 1986. That was the year your father founded his firm, wasn't it?" Sarah nodded, a chill running through her. "Jensen knows enough about my family to use our history as passwords." "Or someone wants us to believe it's Jensen," Nathan countered. "We need to proceed carefully." Tyler stirred on the couch, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Olivia immediately stepped forward. "I'll take him to the executive dining room for some dinner. You two follow this lead." At Sarah's hesitation, she added, "I have 2 kids of my own. He'll be safe with me and we'll stay in the building." After they left, Nathan locked his office door and accessed a secure terminal. This goes through a separate server, outside Pinnacle's main network. If we're being monitored, this might give us a window. Together, they searched for secondary email accounts associated with Marcus Reynolds, finding one registered to a personal address. The password from the anonymous email worked on the first try. The drafts folder contained dozens of unsent messages, a classic technique for covert communication. The recipient field contained an email address Sarah recognized immediately, a variation on the one Alexander Jensen had used to communicate with her father. "These go back months," Nathan said, scrolling through the drafts. "Instructions for steering the acquisition, details about our security protocols, even board members' voting patterns." One draft from 3 days earlier made Sarah's blood run cold. "Mitchell girl complicating matters. Her presence at Pinnacle is unexpected but potentially useful. Blackwell is keeping her close, exploring connection. If she becomes a problem, we have leverage with the child." Nathan's face hardened as he read, "We need to take this to the FBI." "No," Sarah countered, thinking rapidly. "If Jensen has the connections my father always suspected, involving federal authorities could tip him off. We need to catch him in the act." "How?" "The acquisition vote is tomorrow morning. By afternoon, Militech systems will be integrated with ours." Sarah stared at the screen, pieces falling into place. What if we let him think he's won? What if Militech's acquisition goes through exactly as he planned? Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You want to spring the trap by stepping into it?" Jensen's arrogance was always his weakness. "My father said he couldn't resist taking credit for his brilliance." Sarah leaned forward. "What if you and I have a very public falling out? I quit dramatically. You fire me in front of witnesses. Jensen's people report back that I'm no longer a threat. While you're actually working with Olivia to identify the attack vector when it happens," Nathan finished, understanding dawning. "It might work. But what about Tyler? He stays with Olivia tonight. Her home has security, and Jensen won't be looking for him there." Sarah met Nathan's gaze. "I can do this. I need to do this for my father, for Tyler's future, and for your father too." Something shifted in Nathan's eyes, a recognition perhaps of the shared pain that connected them. "All right, we stage the confrontation in the analyst bullpen tomorrow morning just before the board meeting." "Make it convincing," Sarah said. "Jensen needs to believe you've written me off completely." What neither of them could know was that their plan had already been compromised. In the building's security center, a guard with divided loyalties was reviewing the footage from the executive floor's silent alarm system, triggered when Nathan had locked his office door. The guard couldn't hear their conversation, but Mao Di could see them huddled at the secure terminal, clearly working together despite the supposed tension between them. Within minutes, a text message was sent to a burner phone. "Blackwell and Mitchell collaborating. Using secure terminal. Acquisition may be compromised." The response came seconds later. "Implement contingency plan. Tonight." Sarah woke to the insistent buzz of her phone at 4:37 a.m. The screen displayed a message from an unknown number. "Check your email now." Beside her in Olivia's guest bedroom, Tyler slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing around them. Sarah had agreed to Olivia's offer of sanctuary after their planning session, too wary of returning to her apartment, with Jensen's threats looming. She opened her email to find a video attachment. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. The footage showed Nathan Blackwell entering his Upper West Side penthouse the previous night, only to be ambushed by 2 masked figures. A brief struggle ended with Nathan unconscious, being dragged into his own elevator. The final frame showed a close-up of his face alongside a digital clock, 3:17 a.m. A text message followed. "The acquisition proceeds as planned, or Blackwell disappears permanently. Come alone to Navy Pier, North End, 5:30 a.m. Tell no one or he dies. Sarah's mind raced. Nathan had been taken because of their plan, because of her. Waking Olivia could risk escalating the situation, but facing Jensen's people alone was suicide. She needed leverage. Carefully sliding out of bed, Sarah went to the guest room's desk, where Olivia had set up a laptop for her. Using her temporary Pinnacle credentials, she accessed the secure server where she and Nathan had found Marcus Reynolds' hidden communications. If Nathan's suspicions were correct, Jensen was using Militech as a vehicle to infiltrate Pinnacle's systems. The acquisition would give him access to billions in client assets, algorithmic trading systems, and enough insider information to manipulate markets for years. Sarah downloaded everything they had discovered, encrypting it and sending copies to 3 separate secure email accounts she had maintained since her father's downfall. Insurance. Next, she crafted a message to Olivia, set to deliver automatically at 6:30 a.m. if she didn't return to deactivate it. Olivia, Nathan has been kidnapped. I've gone to attempt a negotiation at Navy Pier. If you're reading this, I haven't returned. Attached is evidence connecting Marcus Reynolds to Alexander Jensen, now Andrew Jacobson of Meridian Capital. Jensen is using Militech to infiltrate Pinnacle Systems. Please protect Tyler. His grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, lives in Boston. Contact info attached. She doesn't know he exists, but she's family. Thank you for believing in me. Sarah. She dressed quickly in the darkness, leaving Tyler a note that she had gone to work early and would see him soon. The lie felt bitter on the paper, but she forced herself to focus on the task ahead. The Chicago waterfront was deserted at 5:25 a.m., a biting November wind sweeping across Lake Michigan. Sarah walked toward the north end of Navy Pier, her coat pulled tight against the cold. Security cameras would be minimal here in the off-season pre-dawn hours. No witnesses, no help. A sleek black car waited at the meeting point, its engine idling. As Sarah approached, the rear door opened. "Get in," commanded a familiar voice. James Foster sat in the back seat, immaculately dressed despite the early hour. There was no sign of Nathan. "Where is he?" Sarah demanded, remaining outside the vehicle. "Safe for now. Whether he stays that way depends entirely on your cooperation." James gestured again to the seat beside him. "We have much to discuss and little time." Sarah hesitated, then slid into the car. The door locked automatically behind her. "You're working for Jensen," she said. Not a question, but a statement. James smiled thinly. "Alexander and I have mutual interests, just as your father and I once did, before he became inconvenient." You were the silent partner, Sarah realized, pieces falling into place. The one who helped Jensen frame my father. Frame is such an ugly word. We simply rearranged certain facts to our advantage. James's composure was chilling. Your father made a critical mistake, Sarah. He discovered one of our more creative accounting structures and threatened to expose it. We couldn't allow that. So you destroyed him, took everything from him. Business is rarely personal, but sometimes examples must be made. Now, history is rhyming rather poetically. James handed her a tablet. Your login credentials. You will attend the board meeting this morning and deliver a glowing endorsement of the Militech acquisition. Afterward, you will provide remote access to Pinnacle's main trading platform. And if I refuse, Nathan Blackwell will join your father in obscurity and disgrace. Only in his case, the story will involve offshore accounts, embezzled client funds, and a hasty flight to a non-extradition country. James's smile returned. The evidence is already prepared, as is a similar package linking you to the scheme. Sarah stared at the tablet, mind working furiously. I need proof Nathan is alive before I do anything. James tapped his phone, and a video call connected. Nathan appeared on screen, bound to a chair in what looked like an industrial space. His face was bruised, but his eyes were alert. Sarah, whatever they want, don't... The call ended abruptly. Satisfied? James asked. The board meeting begins at 9. I suggest you use the time to prepare your remarks. I want to speak to Jensen directly, Sarah demanded. Alexander is otherwise occupied finalizing our position for after the acquisition, but rest assured, your performance today is of great interest to him. The car pulled away from Navy Pier, heading toward the gleaming pinnacle tower now visible against the lightening sky. Sarah clutched the tablet, outwardly defeated but inwardly calculating. James believed he had won, believed she would sacrifice Pinnacle to save Nathan. That assumption was her only advantage. As they drove, Sarah covertly studied their route, noting that they were heading not to Pinnacle directly, but circling toward the warehouse district. James was distracted, typing rapidly on his phone. "We need to make a brief stop," he explained without looking up. "A colleague will escort you to the office afterward." The warehouse where they stopped was nondescript, one of dozens in the area. As James led her inside, Sarah tensed, prepared for a trap. Instead, she came face to face with Alexander Jensen himself. He looked older than in the surveillance photos, but his smile held the same practiced charm she remembered from childhood, visits to her father's office. "Sarah Mitchell Reynolds," he greeted her, as if they were meeting at a business lunch rather than a kidnapping. "You've grown into your father's talent, from what I hear. It's almost a shame we find ourselves at odds." "Where's Nathan?" Sarah demanded. Jensen gestured to a closed door across the warehouse floor. "Securing your cooperation was essential, but I assure you we're business people, not criminals. Once the acquisition is complete and our access to Pinnacle's systems is confirmed, Mr. Blackwell will be released. Somewhat embarrassed, perhaps, but unharmed." "You expect me to believe that? After what you did to my father?" "Your father forced our hand. Nathan Blackwell's fate rests entirely with you." Jensen approached, studying her. "The board meeting is in 3 hours. You have one task: ensure the acquisition proceeds. James will accompany you to Pinnacle and remain at your side until the vote is complete." Sarah's mind was racing, forming and discarding plans. Her eyes darted to the door where Nathan was, presumably held, calculating distances and probabilities. Jensen noticed her gaze. "Don't attempt anything heroic, Sarah. There are 4 armed security personnel in this building, all former military. Additionally, Marcus Reynolds is prepared to intervene should you deviate from the script at the board meeting." "Marcus is that deeply involved?" Sarah asked, buying time to think. "Marcus has ambitions that aligned perfectly with our needs." Jensen smiled. "In fact, it was his idea to use your son as leverage if necessary. I found that a bit excessive, personally, but his attention to contingencies is admirable." The casual mention of Tyler sent ice through Sarah's veins. She forced herself to remain outwardly calm while fury built inside her. "I won't help you destroy another innocent person's life. You can threaten me, but what?" Jensen's smile faded. "You'll sacrifice Nathan Blackwell on principle? I thought you might have learned from your father's mistakes." From the corner of her eye, Sarah noticed movement at the warehouse entrance, a flash of dark clothing quickly concealed. Someone else was here. "My father's only mistake was trusting people like you," she replied, raising her voice slightly. "People who build nothing, create nothing, but manipulate systems for personal gain." "Your naivete is disappointing." Jensen checked his watch. "We're wasting time. James will brief you on the specifics of your board presentation. I suggest you focus on being convincing." As Jensen turned to leave, the warehouse door burst open. Olivia Carter led a team of security personnel, guns drawn. "Federal agents, nobody move." Chaos erupted. James lunged for Sarah, but she was ready. Driving her elbow into his sternum with all her strength, he doubled over as she bolted toward the door where Nathan was being held. It was locked. Sarah grabbed a metal bar from a nearby shelf and smashed the lock mechanism with desperate strength. The door gave way to reveal Nathan, struggling against his restraints. "How did you—" he began as she rushed to untie him. "I included my location in the email to Olivia," Sarah explained, hands working frantically at the ropes. "I gambled that she'd check her messages early." Outside the room, shouting and the sounds of a struggle continued. As the last restraint fell away, Nathan grabbed Sarah's arm. Jensen, still out there, with Olivia and what I'm guessing are FBI agents, not Pinnacle Security. Nathan's eyes widened. You brought the FBI in? If Jensen has the connections he claims, I didn't have a choice. They took you because of me. Sarah helped him to his feet. Besides, I had insurance. They emerged to find Jensen and James Foster in handcuffs, surrounded by federal agents. Olivia rushed to them, relief evident on her face. Tyler's safe, she assured Sarah immediately. He's with my husband under protection. Are you both all right? Nathan nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on Jensen. How did you convince the FBI to move so quickly? A man in a suit approached, offering his hand. Special Agent David Cooper, we've been building a case against Jensen and Foster for years. Ms. Carter provided the final pieces we needed with the evidence you gathered. Years? Sarah echoed, confused. Alexander Jensen and James Foster have orchestrated similar schemes at 7 different financial institutions, Agent Cooper explained. Your father's case was one of the first we investigated, but we could never prove the connection. Jensen smiled coldly as agents led him toward the door. This isn't over, Sarah. People like us don't stay down for long. People like you belong in prison, she replied steadily. My father knew that. Now everyone else will too. As the agents took Jensen and Foster away, Nathan turned to Olivia. The board meeting is postponed, she finished. I called an emergency session last night after receiving Sarah's evidence about Marcus. He's been suspended pending investigation. And Militech? Sarah asked. We're conducting a complete forensic analysis of their systems before proceeding, Olivia replied. Initial findings suggest at least 3 subsidiaries were structured specifically as backdoors into our networks. Nathan's phone rang, the board chairman, demanding explanations. As he stepped away to take the call, Sarah found herself suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline of the past hours draining away. Olivia squeezed her shoulder. You saved Pinnacle today, and possibly Nathan's life. I put everyone at risk in the first place, Sarah countered. If I hadn't been so determined to clear my father's name, then Jensen would have succeeded, Olivia interrupted firmly. Your father would still be blamed for Jensen's crimes, and Pinnacle would be compromised. Some risks are worth taking. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in Nathan's office, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. The investigation into Jensen's network had expanded to include financial institutions across 3 continents. Marcus Reynolds and 2 other Pinnacle executives had been arrested for their involvement. The Militech acquisition had been cancelled, with Pinnacle stock actually rising on the news once the potential security breach was disclosed. You wanted to see me? Nathan asked, entering the office. Sarah turned. I'm resigning. Nathan raised an eyebrow. After everything that's happened? Why? The FBI has asked me to consult on their ongoing investigation. My knowledge of Jensen's methods, combined with my financial background, she shrugged. It feels like the right next step. And Tyler? He's thriving at his new school. The apartment we found in Lincoln Park is perfect. Close enough to the office, but with a park across the street, just like I promised him. Nathan nodded slowly. I won't try to change your mind, but I want you to know that Pinnacle's doors will always be open to you. What you did was partly for selfish reasons, Sarah admitted. Clearing my father's name was always my goal. And now that you have? Now I have new priorities. She handed him an envelope. This is a copy of my father's original evidence against Jensen and Foster. He hid it with my godmother years ago, with instructions to release it only if something happened to him. The FBI has the original now. Nathan took the envelope. Thank you. For everything. An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Their shared ordeal had created a connection neither had anticipated. In another world, perhaps they might have explored it. I should go, Sarah said finally. Tyler's waiting. Nathan stepped closer. You know, in all this chaos, I never properly thanked you for saving my company and my life. We saved each other, Sarah corrected gently. Some debts can't be repaid, but they can be honored. Nathan extended his hand. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. That's my promise to you. Sarah looked at his offered hand, then met his eyes. Instead of shaking it, she stepped forward and embraced him briefly. Goodbye, Nathan. As she walked out of Pinnacle Investments for the last time, Sarah felt lighter than she had in years. The shadow of her father's disgrace had finally lifted. The truth had come to light, and most importantly, she had secured a future for Tyler, free from the ghosts of the past. Outside, snow had begun to fall, the first of the season. Sarah turned her face upward, letting the flakes melt against her skin. For the first time since holding her newborn son, she allowed herself to dream. Beyond mere survival, the world would never be perfectly just or fair, but with courage and truth it could be better. It could be enough. Tyler was waiting on the steps of his school, his face lighting up when he spotted her. As she held him close, Sarah knew that, while some chapters of her story had closed today, the most important ones were just beginning. "Ready for our new adventure?" she asked him. Tyler nodded eagerly. "Can we get ice cream first, even though it's snowing?" Sarah laughed, taking his hand. "Especially because it's snowing." Behind them, the Pinnacle Tower gleamed against the winter sky, a reminder of battles fought and won, of truths revealed and redemption found. Sarah didn't look back as they walked away. She didn't need to. The path ahead was finally clear. Femme ta historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've been captivated by Sarah and Nathan's journey through the treacherous world of high finance and personal redemption. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most valuable currencies are truth and courage, not dollars and cents. For more emotionally charged narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and triumph over adversity, we've created a special playlist you'll find by clicking on the link to your left. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that delve into life's most profound challenges and victories. Don't miss our upcoming content. We have so many more tales waiting to be told. We're eager to hear your thoughts in the comments section below.